All right, let's go. All right.
All right, Dad. Well, last week we talked about Dell. We talked about Jim Montgomery got fired, and that lasted, what, like 4 days?
5 days.
5 days.
5 days.
And he got hired by the St. Louis Blues. And
by God, that was fast.
That was fast. You got to feel sorry for Drew Bannister, though.
Yeah. I mean, the guy didn't have a bad record.
Well, I know, but what did Doug Adams say to you?
Hey, Doug Adams said, and behind my back, I heard him say, they're hired to be fired.
Yeah.
And boy, do they ever fire them.
I know, but that was totally unexpected. I looked to see if they gave, like, how much. I couldn't find what his contract was.
Undisclosed,
but I think it was like a 3 or 4 year contract he got.
Oh, well, he wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
If he was signed this year.
Yeah. But again, we'll say it before, Dad, you called it. Like, first game of Boston we watched, you said,
there's something wrong with the Boston Bruins. I know that the Bergeron retired, and I know he took all the draws and did everything, but there was something funny going on in Boston.
Yeah, because I think they were so high hopes still. Their defense is just massive. Yeah. But, they got rid of Allmark, and Swayman hasn't played like he did last year. I mean, he's played all right, but he's not robbing games. And unfortunately for Ottawa, Ullman hasn't been playing that today.
Well, I don't know. I don't understand what happened, but there's something was funny going on in Boston.
So before we get to the questions, Dad, Dell, the women's hockey started, the new league started. I don't get the Toronto name.
No.
What is it? Scepters? I don't get that.
What is it?
Scepters.
I don't know.
I don't get why they call that. But you know what? They have two rules that I think are kind of neat that the NHL should look in. First of all, they had it last year that if you score a shorthanded goal, that kills the penalty.
And it should be.
Yep. So if you score the goal,
good.
yeah, that's a double whammy. But the one I like this year, and the one is that if let's say Toronto gets a penalty, right? So then Montreal can put on their power play.
Right.
Toronto has to keep the players on the ice when the penalty was called, so they can't go put their penalty killing on.
Oh, something. That's pretty good. There's always new rules coming in, and
what do you think of that rule? Do you like that?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Well,
because you're going to get more goals. So when you watch the goals on the power play, they're usually scored in the first couple of minutes because they can't
double opportunity.
Yeah, they get it. Yeah, the one thing you and I and Del we were talking about is that Hockey Canada now they got to start getting more infrastructure for the women.
You got the league, now you got to feed the league.
Right. Well, we'll be watching the women's this year. But not bad hockey.
Pretty good hockey. They started off not calling the stupid penalties. They've settled back into, and now they're calling them stupid penalties.
Like, you hope the women don't get into the NHL thing where the guys are looking for penalties.
Yeah. And they started looking.
Okay, Dad, we got a whole bunch of questions from the fans. We got close to 700, so we're not going to get to them all today, but we'll get to a few. So, Del, what's the first question?
From Denton Williams on Facebook, he asks, "Hey, Tim, did your dad need to get your mom's permission to take you to Slapshot?"
Did you?
No, I didn't. I just took you.
What is the saying? It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
That's right. Yeah, because Mom would have said no.
She would have said no.
Yeah, but you remember when we went and bought the tickets? Dad goes 2 for Slapshot. It was an afternoon. Matinee, and the lady looked and she said, "Do you know how much they swear in this movie?" Remember what she said?
Yeah, I think I said, yeah, he's heard it before.
Yeah. Remember the guys were calling you Reggie before you went to see it?
I never thought for it, and they were calling me Reggie. That was a nice coat, Tim.
You almost had the exact same coat as Reggie Dunlop in the movie.
Yeah. It was almost the same.
Yeah. So here's some stuff about Slapshot. Yeah, you took, I guess it was 14. That's what you said. Oh, you heard it before. Bruce Boudreau, right? Your buddy Bruce Boudreau?
Yeah.
In the scene where Paul Newman was trying to sleep and the phone kept ringing?
Yeah.
that was his place.
That was his place.
That was his place.
A big Canadian flag.
The big Canadian flag, yeah. And he said, but they didn't touch a thing. They left. That was just the way it was. And your buddy, Connie Mad Dog Madigan.
Yeah, he was in it.
Yeah, he was Ross Mad Dog Madison.
Oh.
And you know the woman that owned the team?
Yeah.
That was the writer, Nancy Dowd. She wrote.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was the writer. And she also wrote, did a big part of writing that football movie, North Dallas 40.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And her brother played what happened was her brother played in the minors, and she gave him a recorder to record the talk on the bus. That's why there was so much swearing. And her brother was Ogie Oglethorpe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
cool.
And do you know Paul Newman? Do you know who they originally wanted to play Paul Newman?
Who?
Al Pacino.
A little small.
Yeah, a little small.
A little small.
But he was the first guy to get the script.
Oh, yeah?
And wanted to play it, and he couldn't skate very well. And
Got to skate a little.
yeah, and the director just said, well, you know, he goes, you're kind of small and you can't skate. And he says, well, that's your job to
Teach me.
teach him. And then they didn't. So, but nobody but Paul Newman could play Reggie Dunlop. Right.
I think Reggie Dunlop was played perfectly by Paul Newman.
So one thing, Dad, one of your stars in Boston, he was going to be in a movie. Phil Esposito.
Yeah, and Phil Esposito, and he was supposed to get pretty good dough for that too.
I don't know how much he meant, but he was going to play the brother-in-law in The Godfather.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was the one.
Yeah, you know, Sonny.
No, that was James Caan. No, it wasn't James Caan. He was playing the brother of a guy named Carlo Rizza. Sonny went and beat him up.
Oh yeah.
Phil said two things. He says, "I don't want to hit a woman," right? Like that's not like Phil. That's like it. And he goes, "I'm not being. I was disloyal, but it was the regular season during the season, so he couldn't do it." But you know, Dad, you and I were talking about Phil. I'd have to say the trade between Phil and Carl Vadnais and Brad Park and John Rattel was the biggest trade ever in the National.
I'd have to say that. Give some of the records of Phil.
So, get this, Del. I said, just get this. So, in the 2 years before Phil was traded, and he was playing for the Bruins, and three years before he'd won a Stanley Cup. In the 2 years before he got traded, he had 129 goals and 272 points. Jeez. So, take Matthews. That would be like trading Matthews and Riley. Matthews would have had 109 goals and 93 points.
Damn.
But
So, I mean, and
Harry saw the way we were going.
it was right out of the blue, right?
Yeah. Oh, and nobody knew about it. And the records, boy, they give it to Harry after that. And I have to say that I never stood up for Harry, and he took all the heat.
Yeah. How did you tell the players? It was in Vancouver, right?
I'm trying to think of when I told him. And Phil kept hanging around, kept coming into the room and then going out of the room, and that they never did.
No.
They never,
So should we tell the story about you having to tell Phil and Bobby?
Oh, yeah.
Well, and the thing was that it was about to break in the newspaper, so you had to tell him in the middle of the night.
Well, I got a call from Harry, and Harry said, the trade's been done. It's done. You have to go and tell Phil. Holy shit. So I knocked the door. And Phil answered the door. He was dressed in white silk pajamas. Anyhow.
And Bobby was with you. Bobby Orr was with you.
Yeah, Bobby Orr was with us. He was in shorts.
He wasn't happy.
No, he was not happy. I got in there and I said, Phil, you've been traded. And he said, what are you, what are you, nuts or something? I said, no, I said, you've been traded. He says, Grapes, if you tell me, and Bobby went over by the window. I said, if you tell me I've been traded to New York Rangers, I'm going to jump out that window. I said, Bobby, get away from that window.
Is that a true story?
That's a true story.
Yeah. He was pretty upset of all the
he started crying. Yeah. Started to cry.
Well, the thing is, too, is like Brad,
we were first place club. First or second.
First or second, but Brad Park too. Like he must have he wrote a book called Play the Man and said just horrible things about the Bruins fans.
Really?
So imagine them saying you're going to Boston.
I asked one of the players. I said, "Why are they booing Park?" And he never did anything. He skated on the ice. They start booing him.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that.
The one thing too that I think why Phil got mad was he just signed a contract.
He just signed a contract, and it had no trade. And Phil said, "You don't have to worry about that, Harry. You can leave that out." Imagine he had
2 months later.
Yeah.
The big thing too is,
and the big thing is that Phil had an offer by the WHA for a lot of money.
Yeah, in the millions.
A lot, yeah.
So what happened when the players, when you told the players?
I told the players at a morning skate, and I blew the whistle, and nobody speeded up.
It was a little rebellion.
Oh, and there was total rebellion, and nobody skated, and I said, "Listen, you." I guess I can't say, "Listen, you guys, if we can trade Philip Esposito, we can trade any of you."
That's for sure, yeah.
You guys, next time I blow the whistle, you better speed up. So, and they speeded up. That was their little form of rebellion.
You'd say, like, Harry doing that trade, and the pressure he put on you and him. Like, if you guys didn't do well.
We didn't do well, we're both gone. A lot of guts, though, eh?
Yeah. Like that, like you could say, well, the Gretzky trade was the biggest trade, but Gretzky kind of forced their hand.
Yeah.
And everybody knew it was coming. This would be like the Leafs fans going to bed on Sunday and waking up Monday morning and Austin Matthews and Morgan Riley were traded.
Come on.
Like then there would be total rebellion, and that's what because Phil was loved in Boston.
Oh, he really was. Well, first of all, he was Italian.
The big Italian population in Boston,
and a big Italian and Irish Italian.
I'll tell a quick story about how Bobby and Phil how they were loved when we went to the games, we would go up a ramp and we would park in the old Boston Gardens. So right after the game, you guys were flying out to somewhere. We're flying out to somewhere. So you're going to drive to Logan Airport, and then Mom and I were going to drive home. I don't know where Cindy was. And so Phil and Bobby didn't have a ride. So you said, okay, come with us. So we're about to go down the ramp, and there's got to be 200 fans there. So we're slowing down, and Bobby goes, keep going. And, Dad loves his cars. They're all nice and thing. And so we're driving slow, and Phil rolls down the window to sign an autograph. And it was like the Lord of the Flies. There was just guys climbing all over the car. And Phil, and boy, was Bobby. So Bobby rolled down the window. They signed a whole bunch of stuff. And then I think the cops had to come to move them, right? Or we would have been there all night, missed the flight. So Bobby wasn't too happy. You weren't too happy.
Oh, no, he wasn't too happy about that one.
No, your car got all scratched up from people jumping on it. So,
I wasn't too happy.
Okay, we got from Hickey fan, Don. You hear about how violent hockey was back in the 6-era league. Was it really more violent than hockey is today?
You know that hit that Reeves had on Nurse? That would have been a good check.
So was there a lot of fights? Was there a lot more fights?
There wasn't a lot more fights, more hits, more hits, a lot more hits. And when I see the guy letting up on a guy,
they no letting up in the 6 league.
There was no letting up.
Yeah, because I remember not letting up on guys. I remember watching some footage when we were doing the Rock'em Sock'em and Gatsby just laying out Horton, didn't let up one bit.
No, broke his leg
and his jaw, right?
Yeah, and his jaw at the same
one
time.
hit.
What a hit!
One hit. Broke his jaw and his leg. Yeah. It was violent.
Just by talking to guys like Larry Zeidel and Connie Mad Dog Mannequin, the stick was used a little bit more.
Stick was used a little bit more, and guys didn't let it on. They were hurt.
Yeah.
When the guy, you see the guys going down.
They didn't snap their head back like they do today.
Snap their head back and go down.
But I think they're talking about the most violent. I think in the 80s. With the fights, the more the fights kind of peaked in the 80s.
I would say about 1980, 79, 80. That's when we were at their peak in the fights. And then they cracked down on the fights.
Yeah, it took a few years after. But like we were watching the highlights last night with the Rangers and Montreal. Boy, that was a fight between Trouba and Anderson. That was a good fight.
That was a good fight.
I just can't get over, though, how they don't break their hand or a finger on the helmets.
I don't know either. And he was hitting him on the back of the head.
Yeah, I know.
And I just don't know how they get away with it.
Yeah. Did you ever break your hand throwing a punch?
No, but I had a deep cut there.
Yeah.
I had a deep cut in between the second and third, and I was supposed to put tape on it, and I said, I can't put tape on it because if I get into a fight, I get a 4-game suspension and the whole deal. Mm-hmm. So...
didn't it get infected?
Well, it was all infected and the whole deal. How I ever got through that was beyond me.
I remember what was the time you said you threw a punch and you hit the stanchion?
I was sticking up for Claude Evans, and I fell down. And boy, did this Murray Belford give it to me, and he gave it to me, and he was giving it to me. I was almost out. I said, well, I got one more shot coming, and I grabbed the top of the net. I got one more punch left, and one more punch, and boy, did I cork him. And he settled down after that. Boy, everybody jumped in after that. But I remember Steve.
Didn't you say, though, your hand bounced off his head and hit the stanchion?
Yeah. And Steve Kravchuk. I remember Kravchuk grabbing me and saying, "This is insane." and that's what he said. This is insane.
Yeah.
And
that reminds me of the height of the Boston, when you were coaching Boston, the Bruin and Philly, the wars that were going on there. And Bobby Clark said to Schmatzy, "Come on, Schmatzy, somebody's going to get hurt."
Yeah, he said, "Yeah, and it ain't going to be me."
Okay, Dad, we got one last question, and it's not a hockey question, Del.
Yes, so it's Bruce S. Hey, Grapes, where do you stand on the whole UFO phenomenon, and have you seen any?
I saw one. I don't want to say anything, but there was a big round ball.
So we'll just say you were in Wolf Island.
I was on Wolf Island, and I was looking out over the water, and it was late at night, and this ball come down, and there was no,
like when the helicopters went by, you could see the water.
Yeah, you could see the water.
Yeah,
there was no water, and I'm not describing this very good, but actually, the thing just went right over the corner, and I never.
How big was it?
I would say it was about 12 feet high.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's funny because you say there was no sound, right? You said there's no sound because like every once in a while they would have like some fighter jets would go down around on the St. Lawrence, and like you could hear them coming a mile away. Like you would hear them coming, and even any sound on that water traveled. Remember the one time we were sleeping and we kept hearing the Led Zeppelin, and it was a party boat going by, but it was way across. So sound travels so much on the water, and you didn't hear anything.
You can hear a pin drop on the water late at night.
How many pops did you have that night?
No, I didn't have. I just started to drink. I know nobody believes me, but that's actually what happened.